So what I'd like to do now to wrap up the sales kit is talk about some what ifs. And these are kind of different situations or scenarios that I've ran into, especially when I've been teaching this process to other web designers. These are scenarios that I didn't really teach the course to, but they're things to think about as you proceed and want to use this in your own business. The first is, what if the opportunity isn't big enough? So what I mean by that is, obviously my sales process that I've outlined for you is a suggested 10-hour process that you spend with your prospect, which is a lot of time. And I understand that time is money and you want to make the best use of your time. So what if, for instance, somebody calls you up and they've got just a small web job, right? It's maybe a 5 or 6 hour project that you're going to charge $300, $400, $500 for. Well, obviously you're not going to spend 10 hours with somebody going through a consultative sales approach if they just needed some widget fixed on their website. So I'm not really talking about the small jobs here. What this process is it's helping you take a full website project from a $2,000 or $3,000 project and help you bridge the gap to start doing the $10,000, $15,000 and $20,000 projects. So this isn't really about taking this consultative sales approach and using it on every single little project that comes your way. You obviously have to make a judgment call. If you're somebody that does a lot of hourly work and a lot of small projects, those are one and done estimates. I mean, even when I was practicing this approach, I still sent a lot of one-page estimates to people for really small work that, they called you and they had a very specific need. They weren't talking about fixing their get more customers problem or their bigger picture problems in their business. Now sometimes I'd use those one and done estimates as key opportunities to lead me into doing something a little bit larger, but you have to obviously use your best judgment. If you don't think there's an opportunity for a really big project, then you might want to do something where you're using a quicker estimate, but you want to maybe tie in the interaction model where you schedule a series of scheduled meetings instead of just doing a one-off kind of answer the phone, give them 30 minutes of help, and then all of a sudden you're doing a 3-hour project. You can use the interaction model to maybe increase the value of those projects by doing a little bit more discovery. But obviously you want to play that by ear. So the next what if is, what if you're talking about a new project with an existing customer? Are you going to go through a 10-hour sales process if you're building out a project with somebody that you already have a relationship with? And the short answer to that is absolutely. Just because somebody is somebody you have an existing relationship with doesn't necessarily mean that you shortcut the process. The interaction model is built like it is because you're going to first figure out if this is an opportunity that you want to take on. So even if they're an existing customer, if they're bringing you a new project, a new opportunity, you still want to qualify that project, see if it's a good fit for you. And then of course you're going to want to go through discovery. You're going to want to see if this is a project, that has some real pains and some problems that maybe your prospect didn't already identify. So just because they came to you with a stated need doesn't necessarily mean that there is not room for you to find additional opportunities by doing discovery. And just because they're an existing client doesn't mean you cut corners and you don't present a proposal or present a solution. You still want to go through these main steps. Now sometimes this process can be done a lot faster, but you can still have a lot of interactions with somebody that's going to help you make sure you get that business and you close the deal. So even though you have an existing relationship with them, by going through this thorough process with them each and every time, you're going to find yourself building much more valuable solutions. So just because you know them doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take your huge sticker price and want to move forward on a project. Every project, if you want it to be a high value project, you need to build a lot of value for that. So whether or not they're an existing customer doesn't really matter. The next what if is, what if the customer, the prospect, doesn't want to meet this much? So unless the business owner is super established and has done this a million times, if they don't want to meet this often, they're probably really not trying to find that root problem and solve something really unique in their business. And a lot of times it can also mean that they don't want to pay a lot of money for this. They're just trying to get a quick quote or a quick estimate. And these are the people that we're trying to avoid. So if somebody doesn't want to have this many meetings with you, then it probably means they're not a good fit for a high value project. And at that point, you can either jump out of the process and basically, leave the customer or the opportunity behind and not work with them, or you can try to start modifying your process to work with their situation. The interaction model is built in a way that it's really supposed to be fluid. You're supposed to be able to make the best decision when you're out there on a sale that you can possibly make. Now, typically, when people didn't want to work within my process, that was usually a good sign of problems to come. Whether they were going to be a high maintenance client down the road or whether they were going to constantly haggle me on price, it was usually a good indicator. If they weren't willing to work within my process and spend the time that they needed to spend with me to find out how to build a great online business, then that was usually a big red flag. So use that as an indicator and make a decision of whether or not you want to continue moving forward with that person. And if you start coming back to me and saying, my prospects just don't want to have this many meetings, and at the same time you're telling me I just can't charge enough for what I'm selling, then I'm going to tell you that those problems are one and the same. You're not spending enough time building value, and you're not working with your customers enough on the front side and pushing this model enough to build that value to make it worth your time. As I said, the interaction model is a very fluid process. It's up to you to make the best decision of how you're going to apply this to each and every opportunity. You can shorten the process a little bit. For example, you could potentially do discovery on a simpler project in a single meeting. So instead of having 4 interactions, you could reduce that down to 1 meeting. Now, with not having enough time to do discovery, you're not going to find out as much information about their business, and you're not going to be able to build as much value. But if you're really worried about this and you're having a hard time scheduling this much time with your prospects, then you could potentially reduce discovery down to a single meeting. You could also reduce your solution presentation and your proposal presentation into a single meeting. Now, I don't recommend doing this. As you start to chop and dice and spread out the process or compact it or throw out a meeting here and that kind of stuff, it's going to affect the overall performance of the method. But if you have to, if somebody is absolutely committed to not scheduling this many meetings with you, but you think they're still going to be a well-paying customer, then you can of course modify the process to fit within their needs. So the last item on this list is what I think is probably the most important, which is what if during the process I realize I don't want to work with this prospect. So this is probably my favorite one to talk about. What if during the process I realize I don't want to work with this prospect? And that's an interesting realization to make. You're sitting here, you're on maybe meeting 3 or meeting 4 with them, and maybe there's just something about their attitude, maybe that there's something about, a comment they say about not having enough money, or they only have $500 in their pocket and they want everything for nothing, or whatever it is, right? It could be a lot of different things. Somewhere during the process, you get this gut feeling that you don't want to work with this person. Maybe it's on meeting 1, maybe it's on meeting 2, maybe it's on meeting 6, maybe it's while you're delivering the proposal. It could be anything, but it doesn't matter, because if you ever get that feeling or if you make that decision, you got to hit the eject button. That's what this process is all about. The process is about trying to weed out tire kickers and time wasters and bad clients. So if you're going through the process and you get to that stage where you're like, I don't want to work with this person, at that point, you're hitting the eject button. You're getting out of the opportunity. Obviously, you'll finish the meeting or whatever cordially, but at that point, you just don't schedule your next interaction. You tell them, well, this might not be a good fit for me, and maybe I'll try to refer you to one of my other companies that I work with. So you can either refer them out, or you can simply just say, I don't think this is going to be a good fit for me. The type of work you do doesn't really match up with where I'm headed. So at that point, you'll cordially hit the eject button and get out of the opportunity. And so that's one of the major benefits of the process, is making sure you're always working with the people that you want to, the people that are more close to your ideal customer target, getting to the center of that bullseye versus getting further out. So these are some what ifs that I've come up with. And hopefully, as I've gone through them, it's helped to clarify some potential questions you might have had. But if you have additional questions, I definitely encourage you to leave a comment. I love to have additional discussions in our comments on our site, and it's one of the benefits of this product. use the comments and make this an interactive experience for you. I'd love to talk about past sales experiences, or maybe you got a client project you're working on right now and you need some help. Definitely let us know and we'll help you out in the comments.